For me, the 2021 season was pretty special. It started off with my wife Allie hunting in Minnesota and shooting her first buck ever. I was sitting with her in the tree stand, and it was on a property that we spend a lot of time here at home. So for her to get that buck and me to be in the tree with her really made my season off the bat. After she shot her buck here in Minnesota, I focused my attention to Kansas. This was the first year that I drew a Kansas tag and was actually going to be hunting down there for myself. Now, Kansas is a totally different animal than here in the upper Midwest. It's flat, it's open, lots of brush, CRP looking grasses, cedar trees, and these deer are traveling a lot further than we typically see here in the Midwest. They're covering long ranges, going from bed to food, and then during the rut, these deer can really cover some ground. So it's October 31st, Halloween, and we're headed to Kansas. The game plan is to get down there and use our calling tools to our advantage. So we got the black rack, we got the extinguisher. It's the time of year where these deer are really starting to get aggressive. Never been to this area before, and we're excited to get in the tree. When we got down there, we pulled up onX and we were really able to dissect the farm that we were going to be hunting. Now this farm lays out really cool. There's kind of a small island of timber in the middle of it with CRP and cedars, big tall grass all around this block of timber, all leading out to, boom, this big green alfalfa field. When you look at this thing from an aerial view, it's easy to paint the picture in your mind what the deer are doing. You can see that they're probably bedding in this island of timber, and they're using these tall grasses to transition their way to the big alfalfa field, which is the destination food plot. This field this time of year is super green. The first time we drove by it, we could see deer out there feeding in the middle of the day. We knew that this was going to be a good spot. And when we decided where we were going to hunt, we picked a transition point that was in between that big alfalfa field and where those deer were bedding. So in Kansas, you can use strategies a little differently than we can up here in Minnesota, for example. They can use supplemental feeding as a strategy. So they can use corn or different minerals or other things as supplemental feed to kind of congregate these deer. You know, deer down there, they have a lot larger range. So there's not as much cover that's close to big ag or big food sources. And it seems like, you know, they have a harder time down there, especially in this area, building annual history year after year with these bucks. Up here in Minnesota, we can hold these deer, we can build a history with them for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, maybe before they even become a target. But down there, seldom do they have bucks that they keep up with year after year. It's more sporadic, deer covering long ranges, and they just have that larger area, larger range that they utilize. So this is a spot where we were actually doing some supplemental feeding as well. We put it in this area that was in a transition point between bedding and that big destination food spot, and just added another layer to get these deer where we wanted them. We knew that it was pre-rut. We knew if we were where the does were, that the bucks would be there. In this pinch point, there was also a little water hole that was there, and it had all the makings for a great ambush spot. What we've created here is a little social area. So we have a water hole, we have some supplemental feeding, and we're in this transition zone between bedding and big destination food. So kind of the same as what we do here in Minnesota. You know, we'll set up these little kill plots, have our secluded food plots with maybe a water hole there in those transition areas to try to catch those deer cruising. Again, same concept between bedding and big food. The goal every year is to capture cool, emotional, engaging content. So one of the things that we do is try to capture not just the main angle, but multiple angles to try to tell the story and try to bring you guys into the tree stand with us. That supplemental feeding, getting those deer in one area, it allows us to use multiple camera angles and get those deer in one spot so we can really paint the overall picture of what's going on during our hunt. For this hunt, I had Adam in the tree with me, and we were also running multiple Tacticam angles. So I had one on my bow, I had one above me in the tree that was capturing my perspective over the shoulder, and we also had one down on the ground that was capturing deer moving through right at eye level. I have a reveal cell camera in my backpack, and I put it up right over a scrape that's also right in this little social area. So I put it on video mode. That reveal is gonna send me information when I'm gone, and we're gonna see what's going on here. So the first day was more of a scouting observation day for us, just getting the lay of the land, trying to understand what the deer are doing, checking out the spot. Day 2, November 1st, we spent all day in the stand, and we had a lot of action. A lot of deer in and out, a lot of does passing through, going to that big alfalfa field in the evening, coming back from there in the morning. You know, we're seeing a lot of deer, and finally, first buck shows up. Immediately I pull up my binoculars, and his rack is covered in blood. Now it's early November, and this isn't blood like he just shed his velvet. This is blood that's telling me that maybe he just got in a fight with another buck. You know, he's been fighting, and that's blood from himself or the deer. And what's that tell me? You know, it kind of gives me some excitement and sets up the week. I'm looking at it like, look, if these deer are hard at it and they're fighting and they're fired up, we got the black racks with, we're gonna smash them together this week, and hopefully we pull in the big boy that did this to the smaller buck. Day 3, we jump back in the stand, and we actually have some interesting weather this day. We have some rain, it's kind of overcast, a little windy. It just feels like a big buck kind of day. You know, we're waiting for that weather to break, and we actually have a lot of deer action. As we get towards the end of the day, we hear a deer coming from our left, and I can see it walking through the cedar trees, and I can tell it's a bigger body deer. Well, this buck pops out, and it's definitely a mature buck. He's kind of goofy looking. He's not your unique basket rack or typical looking deer. He lays out real wide. He's not a giant scoring deer, but I can tell he's a mature buck. When you look at his face, and you know, he's got some gray in there, kind of the start of a bigger Roman nose, big body on him. You know, you're looking at these different features, and that's how you tell that this buck is more mature. You know, just really not the buck that I'm looking for. He's a mature deer, but we're out of state. This is only my second day in the tree. We're gonna give him the pass. So we're back at camp, boom, notification on my phone. The reveal sends a video of a giant 9-pointer hitting the scrape in that social area right in front of our stand. This is a great looking deer, super mature, super long G3 on his one side. This is the buck that I wanted to target, and we couldn't wait to get in the stand the next day. It's November 3rd, we're gonna slip in there early in the morning, try to beat these deer in, and backdoor them as they come off that big alfalfa field. Now our access is really pretty bulletproof for this spot. So we can come through a big open field right off the road, we can backdoor it so we don't have to bother those deer that are in the big green alfalfa field. We're gonna make sure that our scent control is on point, we're using the phase system. Everything has to be right in this scenario. There's a lot of deer that are utilizing this transition social area. So our scent control has to be on point, and we can slip into this spot pretty effectively and undetected. So it starts getting light, and you know, we have another day that's just that kind of rainy, dreary day, but the rain's finally gonna stop, it's gonna slow, the wind's gonna die down, but the wind's also gonna switch and be blowing more towards that bedding area. So again, just another reason that we have to use the phase system and make sure our scent control's on point. Well, I look up out in front of me and I can see a rack, just the very tips of it coming through the grass. As the buck gets a little closer, you know, he's weary, he's hesitant. Yeah, we're supplemental feeding here, but it's not like these deer just walk right in there. You can tell that this buck is being cautious, he's approaching, he's trying to get the wind in his favor. So this is a perfect scenario of something that we'd see back home on a kill plot or a social area there. You know, these bucks, all these deer, they don't just march right in. They're very careful, they're calculated. So this deer kind of gives us the skirt and ends up turning and going back the direction he came from. You know, he's not really spooked, but it's just one of those bucks that, you know, it happens. All of us hunters have seen it. They just don't really like something about the situation. They have that sixth sense, and he disappears back to where he came from. Well, as the day progresses, that wind starts to shift, and it starts to blow, sure enough, right up towards where those deer have all been coming from. I get the black racks out and I kind of crack them together, you know, start with just some light tickling, give it a rest, and then advance in getting more aggressive with each calling sequence. A little while after that, some does come in and there's some deer filtering around. And next thing you know, they're looking back in the woods and you can tell that something is going on. Well, I look up in the direction that most of these deer have come from, and right away I see horns coming right down the tree line.
Big buck. We just smoked a giant in Kansas. It happened so fast. He came out of nowhere. We had all these does in here. And he came out of nowhere, marched straight in here like a boss. I was at full draw for I don't know how long. And I was just holding. His front leg was forward. He was quartering towards a little bit. And finally that front leg went forward and boom. That's the big 9. That's heavy. He is a stud. Go. Just drilled him. Perfect. Kind of crosswind a little bit there. Wind's kind of maybe suck it. I mean, it's blowing that way. It switched. And I thought we were done for, you know. I thought that they were going to get us.
Look at that, dude. That's cool, all this beam sweep up.
Man, I was pumped. Just a gorgeous buck, super heavy. You can tell that this is a mature buck. He's heavy, he's got long tines, he's got a super long G3 on his one side. Just a big brute of a 9-pointer. And that's what I came to Kansas for, is to have that different experience, and I got it. And the cool thing was that I was able to take the strategies that we use down there and relate them back to the strategies that I use up here in Minnesota. And that's what makes it exciting for me. It's not just the harvest, it's about using all these different strategies and playing that cat and mouse game and trying to get different camera angles and do different cool things and build that overall experience that in the end is just as important to me as the deer itself. There were definitely a few keys to this hunt. And the first one was just the setup and the access. So the setup was this little social area, you know, the water hole in a transition area with some supplemental feed in between this bedding cell and big alfalfa field. You know, this transition area was tall, brushy grass, it was cedars. So this social area was just set up in that perfect ambush spot. Then on top of that, the access. We had clean access through an open field right off the road. We could get in there without disturbing deer in the morning or bumping deer if we had to slip in there in the afternoon. So a great kind of social area with bulletproof access makes for a killer combo. The other key to this hunt was calling. You know, the first day we saw that buck had blood on his rack. You know, that gave us an idea, even on top of it just being pre-rut, moving into the rut, that these deer were fired up. You know, so we were able to use our extinguisher and use our black rack to make some noise, let these deer know that, hey, we're over here, and use that to our advantage. Another key was the reveal cell camera, and it was sending us intel of what bucks were there, what the deer were doing. You know, we knew we were in a good area, but when we got the video of that buck that night, man, it was just that extra icing on the cake and that like extra reinforcement that we were in the right spot and that extra level of excitement that it gave us to get out there the next day. And the final key, and I think one of the most important ones in this hunt, is scent control. You know, we use the phase system religiously, and especially after getting the video of that big buck the night before, we made sure that our scent control was dialed in with the phase system. Our wind switched that day, we trusted our gut, we trusted the phase system, and it worked.